Welcome to Valentino at Mozart, a live performance experience like no other, presenting music and musicians that have changed the world one note at a time, all from the comforts of a world-class studio. Mozart Studios. What's unique about this experience is that we're performing live and allowing the viewer a chance to interact with us. Through Band Lab, we will share one song of each of our performances. Band Lab is a social media platform that enables creators to make music and share the creative process with musicians and fans all over the world. And it's completely free. Also, we'll be donating a portion of today's proceeds to the Burn Advocates Network, helping victims of burn injuries around the globe. Featuring the Valentino at Mozart Band with Tomoko Ono and Matt King. And today's featured performer, Raghav Mehrotra. Now, on to the show. Tomoko, you came to the U.S. to study jazz with the great Harold Mayburn at William Patterson University. Tell us all how you got interested in jazz.
So when I was in the middle school, I was really into British rock, and I was transcribing Brian May and playing the guitar, which my parents didn't like me to do. But I was playing piano since 4 years old, which is a very common thing in Japan. I was listening to the radio, and I listened to some big band, and that was called jazz, they said. And then I started to already listening to Bill Evans, which he was a great jazz pianist from New Jersey. So besides jazz, there was a magazine called Latina in Japan. So it was specialized in Latin music. And my mom used to tell me she wanted to go to Brazil when she was young to have a new life or something. So I was always interested in the country called Brazil. So then I could buy records at this place, and then I was listening to like Tamba Trio, Jimbo Trio in my high school days. But then I was already playing so much in Japan, because when I was at the college, the Japanese economy was getting better and better, which means more gigs. None of the music conservatory could offer jazz study in Japan. So only choice to study jazz was coming to US. So I checked few schools, Berkeley in Boston. I checked Manhattan School of Music and New School in New York. And then I checked William Patterson in New Jersey, because my friend was a friend of Joe Levano, and when I was visiting New York, I went to his party, and then some of the people were already teaching at the William Patterson gave me the office telephone number. So I decided to come to William Patterson. I would be the first Japanese student at the jazz program. So my piano teacher my major was jazz piano. His name is Harold Mayburn. So he was from Memphis, Tennessee. And then his piano teacher was Phineas Newborn. So I just loved his style, technique and all. And then I had a lot of questions to Harold. And then he said, he told me Phineas was always practicing classical piano. So then, okay. And then William Patterson put me into the classical piano minor. So I could study with Gary Kirkpatrick. He's American pianist, but studied in Austria for a long time. American, speaks German without any American accent kind of guy. So he told me about the really detailed technique. Harold Mayburn, his hands were like bananas. So like really, it's big. So, for instance, I heard Oscar Peterson can reach from C to A. So it's like C to C is one octave, A above that C. So that's the size of the hands. And then Harold was really tall. So physically, I knew I cannot adapt his technique so much.
So Matt, I first learned about you from the great guitarist Chuck Loeb, whom I've admired for many years and was a very versatile, accomplished guitarist. And you yourself have dabbled in many styles. Tell us how you've developed that chameleon-like approach to music.
I'd say I developed an interest in and I guess a reasonable proclivity for playing in various styles, probably out of necessity, if nothing else. When I first came out of college, I had a jazz degree from William Patterson. I was focusing on a jazz career. I was very single-minded at that time, young and foolish. Professionally speaking, I found myself getting all sorts of jobs that weren't related to jazz at all. I had no problem freelancing. I wanted to, make a decent living and have a house someday and cars to drive around and things like that. So I think it was a matter of practicality for me to become very versatile and absorb a lot of different styles of music and spread myself around and learn whatever I could learn and network with whoever I could network with within the jazz world and outside the jazz world. So that's why. As I freelanced more, I actually developed, I'd say, a greater understanding and actually more affinity for, actually enjoyed playing different kinds of music more and more. I always come back to jazz. I always come back to Brazilian music. I always come back to funk and fusion. Those are my home base. But everything else informs me, I think, and enriches me as a musician just from the freelancing, which, as I said, basically was a matter of practicality. I wanted to make a living playing music and not have to have a day job. So in my case, that meant being diverse and being versatile and being flexible.
So what would you say to the musician coming up today?
Well, I'd say you have to be true to yourself as an artist. If you feel like playing a certain kind of music is compromising you as an artist, if it's hurting your image, if you're working on an image or being perceived a certain way by a certain group of musicians, you have to make your own personal choices. For me, I always felt like if I was doing the best job I could possibly do and I was working with the best, if they're best rock musicians or if they were the best reggae musicians or whatever they were, I felt that could only enrich me personally and musically. Some people like to draw a line, as did some of my colleagues just out of college. Some of my colleagues drew a line and said, no, I'm going to do this kind of stuff, but I'm not going to do this kind of stuff. And they compartmentalized. And some of them survived and have done very well, and some of them, a few years down the road ended up having day jobs and don't play music anymore. These are things to think about for anyone going out there in today's market. It's very competitive. There's a lot of talent out there, a lot of young talent, but there's a lot of old talent too, and there's a lot in between. It's something to be aware of, just the reality of making a living as a musician. And I was never even one of these guys that got too far into like composing and arranging and doing soundtracks and MIDI studio and that kind of thing. That's a whole other branch that you can think about doing. Some people don't want to do that. No, I'm just a performer. If you may or may not have the luxury of just being a performer, you may be at a computer doing a lot of stuff online, especially now as we're recording this video with a global pandemic and music venues shut down around the world. Again, that's something to think about. You want to be a performer? All right, will you be able to make a living as a performer? It's a very practical question right now.
Matt, I don't know about you, but when I was coming up, I was told to specialize, get really proficient at what you do. Maybe sing. Now we have multi-instrumentalists like Jacob Collier popping up.
Well, the more the merrier. Jacob Collier is a great example of a guy who's just completely self-contained. He's his own band, he's his own videographer, his own producer, his own arranger. Not all of us have that kind of talent. I'm still trying to figure out how to play this thing after 40-some years. But yeah, I mean, the more you can do, obviously, the better. You want to have as many tools in your arsenal, weapons in your arsenal? Tools in your tool belt, whatever. You get the analogy. You want to have as many things at your disposal that you can. So yeah, being a multi-instrumentalist is certainly great. One thing that opened up some doors for me, I'm going to say 15 years ago, I had a good friend of mine forced me to start singing on gigs. We would do duos and he would do all those things like, Matt, why don't you sing? Oh no, I'm not a singer. Matt, why don't you sing? My mom was a singer. I don't know why it was so foreign to me. He's like, no, I play the piano. That's what I do. There's other singers. He gave me a microphone and a mic stand for Christmas. He said, bring it to the next gig and sing something. He roped me into it and guilted me into it. So now I started singing and I found out that I loved it. And actually I found out that people didn't actually walk out of the room. Sometimes they'd come up and say, hey, you have a good voice. I'd be like, wow, thank you. I didn't work on that at all. But so that opened up doors just like for me now doing singing gigs. Oh, you sing? And all of a sudden like other people are calling me now because they know I can sing. So the more the merrier. Learn as many instruments as you can, sing, learn to compose, learn to arrange, learn how to do stuff on a MIDI studio, learn how to produce. Sometimes they say less is more, but I think these days more is more.
So Raghav, you're 16 years old, and you have played everything from Broadway to Madison Square Garden, and you've been playing the drums since you were 3 years old. It's impressive to say the least. But tell us about your experience at the Drum Fantasy Camp when we met for the first time.
I think Drum Fantasy Camp is definitely one of the best things that has ever happened. I found out about the camp, I don't know how. I think I was just searching online, probably for videos of Steve Smith and Vital Information playing. And I saw that he was playing, that he was teaching at the Drum Fantasy Camp. So I signed up, and I thought it'd be a cool experience to go and have a master class from like my favorite drummers. I mean, who wouldn't love that opportunity? So I was fortunate enough to go to the camp, and you guys had the jam night, and I had the bright idea of playing Steve Smith's song in front of Steve Smith. I still don't know what I was thinking, but I played it, and I think you and I just clicked, and it was a really cool experience to play that and play with such professional musicians at that time. And from there, that definitely changed my perspective on how I approach live performances and gigs, and thinking about the music, I think. So I'm definitely forever grateful for that experience. And we also met at that time, and I'm so happy we did, because I love playing gigs with you, and I love playing the tunes that Vital Information has and the tunes that we put together. So thank you for that. And yeah, it was a great experience overall, and I think a great connector.
Tell us a bit about your influences and what kind of music do you listen to now? Obviously, you've listened to a lot of different types of music and a lot of different genres, but what are you listening to right now?
Right now, I'm in a huge like fusion jazz kind of phase, and I think before I was 10 or 11, I was like super into classic rock, and I think that's the foundation for anything I play. So definitely John Bonham, Keith Moon, the classic artists, the Rolling Stones. And then as I got older, I think I learned more about funk and soul and jazz, and I really took a liking to James Brown, Clyde Stubblefield on the drums, and most recently Elvin Jones with the John Coltrane Quartet. And Elvin Jones, I think, has had the most profound impact on my playing because of the way he treats each part of the drum as a separate instrument, especially the ride cymbal, how he creates a time, not only a time, but uses that as the driving force of the band, not just to stay in the back and feature the soloist, but use it as a conversational tool. So that's something that I love to listen for and love to study every time I listen to it. So
how would you go about introducing some of your friends, your peers, for instance, to the music you love?
I think there are a lot of bridges between like the old classic jazz and even the new pop. So I don't know how I would introduce jazz to someone who's listening to, like, I don't know, Lil Wayne or someone like that, but I have no idea how I would do it there. But I think if you were to go from Lil Wayne to someone like Anderson .Paak, who's a little bit more funk influence, he still raps, but he's more funk influence. He's a drummer himself, and then you see who Anderson .Paak associates with, and you listen to their music. Like, I guess Thundercat is one other person, and you dig deeper into who Thundercat was influenced by. I think he loves this album. He told me he loves Soothsayer, the Wayne Shorter album. So you say, oh wait, well, why does he love this album? And you listen to Soothsayer. I think that's just exploring people's influences is a great way to get into the history of music, and that's how I'd characterize my listening. It's all listening to the history of things and learning from what others did, and I guess building on them.